Welcome back. Now, today, the 16th of June, marks Bloomsday, the date depicted in James Joyce's novel Ulysses and named after the central character Leopold Bloom.
Yes, between 3 and 6 today, the long-standing tradition of songs, readings and performances from Ulysses will take place at Wolfetone Square in Dublin. And supporter of Bloomsday, at the heart of it really, Senator David Norris will be there, and he joins us now. Good morning to you, David.
Morning,
Good
David.
morning. It's lovely to be here.
It's lovely to see you.
And I just had, as you know, before the interval, I had my lovely kidneys.
Are they delicious?
You're a fan
Beautifully
as well.
cooked.
I'm yet to
Yes.
be convinced.
Oh, no, they are really lovely.
Oh, they're beautiful. I've just had them. They are amazing.
But you know, it's wonderful to see the city of Dublin convulsed with Bloomsday activity.
Yes.
Because when I started, the first Bloomsday that was celebrated was in 1954. It was Miles McGoplin, Paddy Kavanagh, Tony Cronin and John Ryan. And John Ryan filmed it. But they were the first, and nothing happened for 10 years. And then about 50 years ago, I started dressing up. And I made a uniform, a kind of, not this, it was a straw boater, striped tie, white jacket, white trousers, dark glasses, a walking stick and yachting shoes. It doesn't appear anywhere in Ulysses, but it's all over the world now. It's my Gianni Versace statement.
Yes, it's that white suit, and it's almost an iconic image now, isn't it?
And it's lovely to see it. And I said to Ward Falter, you know, if you handle this right, you have Mardi Gras in Dublin. And they weren't interested at that stage, but my goodness, it's taken off.
Well, why do you think, David, why do you think it's so important to celebrate the book, the writer, the character, and this day? What does it do for Dublin? What does it do for us?
Well, first of all, I mean, Joyce gave an identity to Dublin. If you say Dublin, in Tokyo, Berlin, or New York, people will say Joyce. Yeah. If you say Joyce, they'll say Dublin. So he gave it an identification, just like we're very lucky to have the colour green, the shamrock, and James Joyce. It's brand identification. It's also so full of wisdom. When Leopold Bloom says life isn't about that hatred, insult, history, all that, life is about the opposite of that, and then he's challenged. And what do you mean? Is that the opposite of love? I mean hatred, excuse me, and then he runs away. You know, he's not like Clark Kent. He doesn't disappear into a telephone box and burst out of his underpants. He just says, well, I believe in love. Excuse me, I have to go now.
I heard a very interesting story, and you were telling it in another interview with Pat Kenny, David, about the publishing of the book, which I'd never realised.
Yes.
Will you explain what happened there? Because it was almost by accident, was it?
It was really by accident, because it was published, it started being published in serialization in the little magazine by Margaret Anderson and Jane Heap in New York. But that was stopped. There was an obscenity trial. Joyce was kind of rather disconsolate, and he used to go to Sylvia Beach's bookshop, Shakespeare and Company, the Rue de l'Odéon. And he said, you know, I'm having terrible trouble. I can't get Ulysses published. And she said, in a funny New England accent, because I remember her, she said, oh, Mr. Joyce, would you like me to publish Ulysses? And he said, oh, yes. And so this woman, who had never published anything, in a little bookshop, in the left bank of Paris, published Ulysses.
So she took the initiative in the first place.
She took the initiative, and then Ulysses was published. Yeah, and the printer Darentier thought he knew more than Joyce, and he made corrections, but he made them all wrong. Because in the Cyclops episode, there's a list of all these great characters, and there's what says Michelangelo Hayes. And he put a comma, because he thought it meant Michelangelo, and then somebody called. It wasn't. No, Michelangelo Hayes was the founder of the Dublin Photographic Society in 1800 and frozen to death. And Joyce put him in deliberately, but the compositor knew better.
Tell us about the book, because
Yes.
the book, it's not an easy read.
It's not an easy read, but it is a very easy listen.
Yes.
And I've always said the key to Joyce is the ear. Yeah. I mean, the most intellectually complex episode is Proteus, where Stephen is walking along the Strand and he's puzzling over the problem of the artist, how to give form, fixity, shape to human experience, which is always in chaos. And he has all kinds of very erudite things, metaphysical things, but Stephen also has two physical weapons, a stump of pencil and a scrap of paper, and he's making notation. And you come across something that looks like a misprint, but it's not.
Yeah.
If you listen to it, listen. A four-worded wave speech. It's exactly the sound of a wave, but you wouldn't think of saying it to yourself.
And how do you write that down? How do you write that sound?
Joyce is very careful, and I was lucky to get to know some of Joyce's old friends, and in particular there's one called Frank Budgeon. He was a sculptor, he was a Cornish man, and he met Joyce in Zurich one day, and Joyce looked very satisfied and happy, and he said, "Whoa, you're looking good, did you write something today?" "Oh, yeah. Chapter? A page? Paragraph? A sentence?" Joyce said, "No. I had all the words in the sentence yesterday, but today I got them in the right order."
Oh, brilliant.
That is a meticulous artist
it
where
is,
every word is valued.
And that's why his works are so important, isn't it? Because the words
Yes.
are meticulously crafted.
Yes, and there's also so much wonderful good humour in it. So many laughs, so many really, really funny things, and Dublin turns of phrase and witticism. And Joyce absolutely catches it. I mean, there's a thing, for example, where a tart shouts back at Bloom, "Hey, mister, your fly is open, mister." That second mister.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant
Beautiful, yeah.
piece of pointing.
Beautiful.
Most people say, "Hey, mister, your fly's open," leave it at that. No, Joyce puts in the second
Mister,
mister, which is exactly the way a Dublin Ale wanted to say it.
Exactly. It's that detail, isn't it? And understanding the nuances, I
Yes,
suppose.
but of course the family were deeply ashamed because they came from well-to-do people. They were almost a county family in Cork, and Joyce's father drank them into the slums of Dublin. And for these girls left behind in Dublin to be confronted with the publication of the misery and squalor of their life
Yes.
was very difficult for them.
Tell us what's going to happen today then. So what's happening at Wolf Town?
Well, Wolf Town Square, we're doing a series of readings. I'm doing the last one. It's Gertie MacDowell. I'm almost afraid to say this.
Yeah,
It's
you are.
where Bloom catches a glimpse of ankle.
Yes.
A little touch of what they used to call in the moral guidebooks self-abuse. But it's all done as a firework display.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's marvellous.
interesting.
And Bloom's ejaculation is, and then a rocket sprang and bang, shot blind, and they all cried, "Oh, oh." So you don't get a snatch of the naughty bits at all.
Yeah.
It's all perfectly decent
And you've
polite.
been very well behaved on the couch this morning. Is that going to continue this afternoon?
No, I doubt it.
Well, I couldn't
Very
guarantee.
unlikely, isn't it?
I can't give you a written guarantee of that, but it will be good fun. This year we'll be missing Bob Joyce, Joyce's grandnephew, who died about 10 days ago. But I was at one of the early breakfasts just to say hello to people, and Joyce, his wife, very bravely came in.
Brilliant.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Lovely. So you might make an effort and dress up for later on, will you, Senator?
This is as much as I'm getting dressed. This is it.
You
My
look
walking
fantastic.
stick, which I got in Trieste, where Joyce lived for many years. My gangster hat, which is rather like a hat.
It's very Al Capone-esque, I
It
have
is
to
Al
say.
Capone.
Yeah.
It is a real 1920s gangster hat
Beautiful.
from America.
Beautiful.
And this is the tie that Joyce himself designed
Wow.
to celebrate Ulysses. So I used to put on an awful lot of clobber, but I haven't the energy nowadays. And everybody else is doing it for me.
Yes, they are.
Do you know where Bloomsday really took off? 1982, because I organised that a group of theatre people should reenact the Wandering Rocks between the hours of 3 and 4 o'clock. So we had all the characters from Ulysses and the people of Dublin as a cast of 1 million extras. That was videoed, filmed, it was on news channels all over the world, and really, woof, Bloomsday took off.
And here it is. And here he is.
It's an education to have you on the couch
Dave,
as
it's been
ever,
a joy.
David. Thank
It's
you.
a pleasure to be
been a
here.
joy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.